Hey there guys, and welcome to another episode of China, How It Is. Now today is a very important episode because today we're going to be talking about hospitals. Now, going to a hospital in China is an incredibly daunting task. It's very different to what we're all used to back home, and that doesn't matter what country you come from in the West. China does things very differently. Now, I happen to be in the really very best position to tell you guys how this all works because my main job here in China is training doctors and nurses. So let's talk a little bit about the hospital system here. Now, if you're lucky enough to live in a first-tier city like myself, you have quite a few options available to you. Now, there are actually very few first-tier cities in China. We have Beijing, the capital of course, Shanghai, we have Shenzhen and Guangzhou. That's it, just 4 first-tier cities. Now, a first-tier city is basically a city that is very financially and culturally important to China and has very good infrastructure. You know, second-tier cities and third-tier cities, fourth, whatever, they're not as well equipped to deal with foreigners anyway. So the first-tier cities, you will have options for foreigners. You'll have certain hospitals that you can go to where they have English-speaking doctors. Now, of course, there are very few, and for instance in Shenzhen I can think of 2. There is the Hong Kong University Hospital on Binhe Road. I will put a link down in the description for you guys. You can go check it out. I strongly suggest that if anyone living in Shenzhen has any problem of any kind, they go there, because there are a lot of English-speaking doctors there and they can deal with your problems, okay? Of course, then there's also the Nanshan Hospital. I'm not entirely sure which one, but I think the main Nanshan Hospital also has some English-speaking doctors, at least 1 or 2 in the hospital at any given time to deal with your problems. Okay, it still isn't perfect and it's still very frustrating. Even with all these options, it's frustrating as a foreigner to go to a hospital here in China. And that is really due to the language barrier and also due to the fact that they do things completely different here. Okay, but what if you don't live in a first-tier city? Which is in fact the case a lot of the time. A lot of people I know, they come to China to teach English or to do something along those lines, and they end up in a 3rd or a 4th-tier city in the middle of nowhere, or even in a small town or a village, because, you know, that's where the inexperienced teachers are sent. If you are a very experienced English teacher, or you have some sort of big company that you work for, you are usually sent to one of the bigger cities, 1st or 2nd tier, and then you usually have 1 or 2 extra options. But if you are a new English teacher who has very little or no experience, the places where you'll probably find work are outside of the big cities, because there's a lot of competition in the big cities, in the 1st-tier cities. So you'll end up going to a small town or a small city somewhere. So how do you deal with the hospitals then? What do you do if you get sick? Well, that's what this video is all about. What I've done is I have gone to a hospital which is still theoretically part of Shenzhen, but it's very far away from the city center. It's in Longgang and it's called the Longgang Central Hospital. It is a very big hospital, but you know, if I were to go there from my house now, if I were to drive there, it would take me about an hour and a half. On the public transportation, it would take me close to 2 hours to get there. It's really far away. And of course, out there in Longgang, where this hospital is situated, there are little or no foreigners living in that area. And as a result, the hospitals there have no need to actually cater for foreigners. So this is the kind of situation I'm going to talk to you about. You being a foreigner living in a small town or a 2nd, 3rd, 4th-tier city somewhere, and you go to a hospital because you have an emergency or you have some kind of a medical problem, what are you going to face? How do you deal with the circumstances and what are the procedures? So that's what this video is all about. Okay, so what I've done is I've approached the nursing department at the Longgang Central Hospital, and they have agreed to help me make this little instructional video for all of you. Hopefully, after watching this video, you will be equipped with enough knowledge on how to navigate a Chinese hospital in a smaller city, a smaller town, even the bigger ones. for instance, this is a Shenzhen hospital in a first tier city, but it's far out from the center. So if you happen to live far away and you need to just go to your local hospital, well, now you're going to find out exactly what the procedures are, how to check in and how to actually see a doctor. Okay, so without any further ado, let's begin. Oh yes, and I will be popping up to explain anything that might seem unclear. So let's get started.
Before you come to our hospital, you will need
your passport and the cash or the credit card.
To be safe, make sure you bring at least 1,000 RMB in cash.
If you have friends who can speak Chinese, you can bring them with you. It will make things easier.
Now in China, cash is still king. I strongly suggest that you take cash with you to the hospital, although consultation fees in Chinese hospitals are actually very cheap, probably the cheapest in the world really. Registration fees as well, it's all very cheap, but any tests that you might have to take, and of course the medicine that you prescribed, that can be quite pricey. So they suggest you take about 1,000 RMB, and I agree with them. Now, you can't use your bank card. The only thing you can use is, in the bigger hospitals, and obviously not all of them, you can use a Visa or MasterCard credit card, but this is only in some very big hospitals. The smaller little hospitals and clinics you'll find in the smaller cities, no. However, if you have one of these, I don't know if you can see, it says Union Pay. See that? As long as it's got Union Pay, debit card. So if you have a Chinese savings account or Chinese bank account, you can use your debit card to obviously pay. So that's good to take that along as well.
When you arrive at the hospital, please go to the reception hall.
In the reception hall, please find the hospital guide.
You can recognize the hospital guide by the red sash that they wear.
Please tell the hospital guide the nature of your illness.
The role of the hospital guide is to provide information to anyone who's unsure of what's going on. And they're very useful for people like ourselves, foreigners, because hospitals in China are different, the departments are all different, and they will be able to help us choose the correct department to register in. So it's quite important that you convey to them what's wrong with you.
We will tell you how to say some common ailments in Chinese.
Cold,
感冒
cold,
感冒
fever,
发热
fever,
发热
nausea,
恶心
nausea,
恶心
diarrhea,
腹泻
diarrhea,
腹泻
stomachache,
胃痛
stomachache.
胃痛
Alright guys, so these are just some very basic ailments, but what I'm going to do is, or what I have done is I've asked the nurses at the Longgang Central Hospital to prepare a fairly comprehensive list of some of the problems, including emergency situations that you might have, and I'm creating a document which will then be shared on my Facebook page. It should be up there by now, so you can go to my Facebook page and download a copy of the document for yourself. If it's not there yet, it'll be up within a day or two. And with this document you will be able to very easily print it out, take it with you to the hospital, and basically show the hospital guide what your problem is. Of course, most of us would think that you could fall back on something like Google Translate, but don't forget that all Google services are blocked in China, so if you try to do a Google translation, it's not going to work unless you have a VPN on your phone. It's very frustrating, and that's why a simple document like this could be very useful in a hospital. So for those of you who think you may need this sort of thing, please head over to my Facebook page and download a copy.
The hospital guide will then lead you to the registration counter.
Please show your passport to the teller. The teller will give you an information form to fill out.
Please write your name, sex, phone number, birthday, passport number, and address.
The hospital guide or the teller will help you complete the form and should go to.
Right guys, now this may be very daunting because as you can see the information form is completely in Chinese. If you're lucky enough to go to a very big hospital in a first tier city, you may be lucky enough to have a form that's got English and Chinese on it, but I'd say 99.9% of the time it will be all in Chinese. Now don't worry too much. I find that the staff at the hospitals are very helpful and accommodating. It doesn't hurt to be a little prepared in advance though. If you can have your address written down in Chinese, which is something that every foreigner who lives in China should do anyway, bringing that along can really help. Now, I can't start to tell you the usefulness of having your address written in Chinese. Basically, if you're stuck somewhere, you need to take a taxi, you can show to the taxi. If you need someone to send you a package, you can show that to them or email it to them or whatever. So I think one of the first things you should do upon arriving in China is arrange with the company you're working for or the friends you're staying with to write down on a piece of paper, or even easier, just send you a message on your phone with your address in Chinese. It must be in Chinese characters because Pinyin doesn't help. It has to be in Chinese characters. Use that, show to the hospital guide, and they will help you fill out your address in Chinese on the form. Of course, name and age and so on, you could probably figure it out from the form itself. It's fairly straightforward, and basically that's it. So they will help you fill out the form, and then we move on to the next step.
Once you have completed and handed in your information form, you will pay for an 18 RMB registration fee.
You will also have to buy a medical record book for 1.5 RMB.
The hospital guide will lead you to the department you need to go to.
Right, this medical record book is quite important. It used to be green, but it's white, it's fairly big. And inside there it will have all your test results and all the medication you've been prescribed and so on. This is an important document as all this information isn't stored in the computer, it's stored in this little paper book. So if you are to visit the hospital in the future, you will have to bring this medical record book along with you so that the doctor can know exactly what you have done in the past or what has been done to you in the past. So it is a very important document, don't lose it.
Once you have arrived at your department, please go to the nurses station. Hand over your registration fee receipt and your medical record book. The nurse will enter your information into the computer, and your number and name will then appear on the screen in the waiting area.
Okay, now of course China is very different to the West, and each department in the hospital has a waiting area, and in this waiting area there are usually a lot of people. It can seem quite chaotic and it can be very off-putting for someone coming from the West, but you'll normally see a lot of chairs, a lot of people sitting there, maybe some kids, maybe lots of people coughing all over the place. So it can seem quite uncomfortable and you might not know what to do next. But it's fairly simple. It's sort of like waiting anywhere else. You get a number, there's a big screen, normally a big LED or LCD screen, which will have your name and number come up on the screen when it's your turn. But you first have to get registered into the system, so as they said, go to the nursing station. They're very easy to spot. Looks like a little reception desk or an information desk with some nurses in uniform sitting behind. Hand in your receipt and your medical record book, and they will then of course enter your information into the computer. Then it's just a waiting game. Wait until your name comes up on the screen. It'll also tell you which consulting room to go to.
Please wait for your number to be called.
You must then go to the doctor's consultation room.
Please give your medical record book to the doctor and make sure that he may know the address you may have.
Before you go into the hospital, you must know how to say your address in Chinese.
Okay everybody, now I cannot stress this information enough. If you are allergic to something like a medication or whatever, make sure that you know the Chinese for that medicine. Make sure that you know your allergy in Chinese, because the Chinese medical system does not use the standardized medical terminology that the rest of the world does. They've renamed everything into Chinese, and of course everything has a different name. So penicillin or cephalosporins or any kind of medical name that you know for your allergy, it will not be known to the Chinese doctor. You need to have the Chinese for that. And from experience, I've actually been prescribed in a hospital here in China medication that I'm allergic to. Okay, but it's only because I know and knew to double check, and when I actually got the medicine, I checked everything about it, looked it up online. I actually found out that it was an antibiotic that I was allergic to. So make sure that you know your allergies in Chinese and you've got them written down on a piece of paper to show the doctor. This is incredibly important, guys. So don't forget this. Don't go to a hospital without this information.
The doctor will then examine you. He will then ask you some questions. Please note that very few Chinese doctors can speak English. This is why we recommend you bring a Chinese-speaking friend with you.
Alright, this is a harsh reality of China. Most Chinese doctors cannot speak English, and this is mainly because they don't have to. There isn't a very big priority on doctors to learn English, and if you're perhaps in some sort of a profession which requires you to deal with overseas trade or deal with foreigners in one way or the other, yes, of course, then you would want to learn English. But there's absolutely no motivation for Chinese doctors to learn English, because 99.999% of their patients are Chinese, and if they do come across a foreigner, well, it's very rare, so it's not worth them dedicating all that time and effort into learning a language they're probably never going to use. So this is just the harsh reality. Also, the age of most doctors, they're a little older, and the education system from when they were growing up, of course, there wasn't a big priority on English as well. Now, there are a few younger doctors who can speak some English, but like I said, very few and far between. So you're going to be stuck here with a bit of a problem. I have managed to navigate with very broken Chinese, or in the beginning with no Chinese, doctor's consulting session, where it's kind of just the doctor taking your pulse and, you know, asking you to do some tests, or sending you getting a nurse to take you to take some tests, and they kind of figure something out and give you some medicine. But it's a lot of guesswork, and of course you can't answer the important questions they need to ask. So this is very important. You really should bring someone who could speak English and Chinese with you. Now, I think it's fairly easy for most people. If you are working in a company, doesn't matter if you're an English teacher or if you're some sort of executive, you can find somebody in your company who would be willing to go with you to the hospital and help you, walk you through the process. It actually makes this whole video more or less redundant, because they'll be there to help you translate, etc. But of course, having this video will prepare you and let you know exactly what to expect at a Chinese hospital, and of course so you can understand what's going on, because otherwise it can be very confusing and actually quite frightening. So take someone with you. If you have an English-speaking girlfriend or boyfriend or just a colleague, please take them with you, because it's going to obviously help a lot. Oh yes, and I almost forgot. I would really like to thank the Longgang Central Hospital's nursing staff for helping me make this little instructional video, and of course helping me write the document, which will be on my Facebook page. Thank you very much, guys. It was really nice of you to take the time out and help me make this video. So that's it, guys. Until next time, stay awesome.